Welcome to the official Lost podcast. In this installment, we join Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse for exclusive clues and a preview of the upcoming episode, Fire and Water, which airs Wednesday, January 25th from 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern. Next up, though, we rejoin actor Harold Perrineau, who plays Michael, for part 2 of his exclusive interview. Last podcast, we sat down with actor Harold Perrineau, who plays Michael. This week, we rejoin him for part 2 of our exclusive interview, and we pick up with the most fascinating thing we could think to ask him about. His hair, or lack thereof. You see, when Harold was in The Matrix, his character had long dreads, and despite what many thought, they weren't fake. So, with natty dreads like that, why chop them off?
I actually thought that The Matrix was going to be such a big deal, and it was kind of ish. That I had my hair for so long, I thought that would be the right moment to cut it, because that was going to be a big deal, and we could remember that forever. And now it's time for me to explore other things. So I cut my hair. The Matrix happened, and then, nobody noticed. Like, oh, that was real? That was weird. Your hair is real? That's strange. But it's actually been a good thing that it took about 6 months to get used to, and now I'm really glad that I did, because it gives me an opportunity to do lots of other things.
Imagine for a second the character Michael with dreads, or, while you're at it, Kate, or Shannon, or the dog. In other words, would dreads have affected Harold's chances at being cast?
You know what? I might have been cast for Lost, and actually might have been easier because then I wouldn't have the hair issue that I have now. Like, as my hair is growing again, I'm suddenly thinking, oh my God, is Michael going to have dreadlocks? Am I back to the dreadlocks? I tried to get away from them. They keep pulling me back. So if I'd had them, it wouldn't be a problem. But I do think that I might have gotten cast as Michael, but I wouldn't have been able to do some of the things I did in between. Like, I did this play with Larry Gilliard called Top Dog Underdog, and I might not have gotten the chance to do that because there's specific characters. And the sort of flashback things with Michael may have been more difficult with my hair because, you can't flash back 10 years and your dreads are still the same length, so that would have been a really tricky thing to deal with. And anyway, there are lots of other projects that I've been talking to people about and learning about that have been because they've seen Michael and because my hair is cut, that I actually have a chance to do now. Period things. I can't do anything from the 1930s with the long hair. I can't. You know what I mean? It just didn't make sense, and I wanted to explore those things as well.
Every actor imagines a backstory when creating their character. It helps find their motivation for the scene. With a show like Lost, though, we actually get to see those backstories, and often they clash with what the actor originally imagined. Such was the case with Michael.
I tell you, he's actually nicer than I expected him to be, or he is nicer so far than I expected him to be, and he's got worse luck than I expected him to have. So it's a bit of a I don't know. I try to take characters that I think are challenging and a little complicated and hopefully really smart and, thoughtful and compassionate. And I think Michael is all of those things. He just seems to have a lot of bad luck. And after his, kid being taken from him and the woman that he loves leaving him and then, just working. And then he finally gets his kid back and then they're crashed on some wacky island somewhere and where it just doesn't stop. And now these Deliverance-looking redneck kind of dudes kidnap his kid and then he's back on the island. Like, the dude's got bad luck. So I didn't expect a guy who actually seems so nice to have such bad luck. And that's been an interesting thing to sort of explore that. And, and I think myself as a nice guy, and I've had my run of bad luck, but wow, this dude is, wow.
Of course, the million-dollar question is, where's Michael headed?
The thing I can tell you about where my character's headed is I don't know where my character's headed. That's all I can tell you. I know that Michael is on a mission to get his son back. I know that. I don't know how far he's going to go on that mission. I don't know what that mission is going to mean to him, but I know that he is on a mission to do that, and that's where we are.
How'd you learn all this stuff? My dad used to take me hunting.
Hunting for what?
Birds, mostly. Of course, birds don't shoot back. Yeah. I know people are talking. Thinking I'm gonna go running off after Walt again. If people are talking, I'm not hearing it. But if I was, I'd say it's not a very smart plan. Yeah, it's not.
While the actors may not know much about where they're headed, someone does. And for those answers and more, we turn to executive producers Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse for a sneak peek at what we can expect in this week's episode, Fire and Water.
All right, hello and welcome to our podcast. This is Carlton Cuse.
And Damon Lindelof. Good day, Carlton.
You're doing a better job getting your voice down there in the lower registers now.
I've been listening to a lot of radio, and therefore I think I have mastered how to speak in more dulcet tones.
You have. You sound very much like you should be on an FM jazz station someplace.
That's a nice way of saying I don't sound as much like a girl anymore. But, whatever. Hi, Lost fans. And
hello. So we're going to talk today a little bit about The Hunting Party, which you just saw, and about Fire and Water, which
you're about to see.
Which you're about to see, and then we're going to answer your questions.
Which is my favorite part. So the less dilly-dallying we do before we get to that, the better.
So we'll get on to that. So The Hunting Party was obviously an episode that sort of set up the others as a more significant force of opposition than we might have previously thought. And I think it's sort of an episode that we put together that was really kind of sort of a precursor for in many ways where the show is going this year. Without giving away too much, I think that the episode does sort of key up the conflict with them and the revelation of the man in the woods who we refer to as
Mr. Friendly.
Mr. Friendly.
But that's not his real name, but
right.
That's how we refer to him internally. Because he's just so friendly, even though he doesn't do very friendly things. And amongst them taking Walt and now potentially being responsible for turning our gang around. But I think one of the things, that's sort of frustrating for us as storytellers is we have these designs and we've known for, quite some time, actually, sort of very early in season 2 that, we were going to do this bit with the computer where Walt parentheses question mark was someone claiming to be Walt at least was communicating with Michael, and that would finally, once Michael got back to our fuselage folk, he would actually sort of go rogue and go running after Walt. Because a lot of people have been saying, why is nobody going after Walt? And our answer has always been, because there's nowhere to go after him too. Where would you go? And right. How would you handle it?
So this episode, I think, really sort of sets in motion the storyline that I think a lot of people have been waiting for, which is, we need to get Walt back, and there needs to be an effort to get Walt back. And I know that in some cases there's frustration on the part of the audience that certain questions are left dangling on the show, but we also have in the course of the season endeavored to answer other questions, and clearly the Walt story is something which will be resolved this season, and you will get your answers about what happened to Walt.
And the thing is, and we completely admit to this, that part of the journey of the show is that for every question you answer, you sort of have to leave a new compelling question in its wake, or else the show is going to become incredibly boring. So if you look at The Hunting Party, despite all the things that are going on the island, sort of the emotional reality of what's happening for Jack is really where we approach the story from. And we did give the audience this sort of answer to what happened to his marriage. We realized by the end of the story that that Jack's wife Sarah has having an affair or fallen in love with another man. It's all sort of left very nebulous, but we don't know who that person is, and hopefully in future flashbacks, moving forwards, that we will answer more questions about Jack, but we now know definitively what happened to his relationship, or at least we know more. So it's that balancing act that we're constantly trying to. I'm starting to sound like a girl again now, at least in the way that I'm talking about emotion.
You sound fabulous. Just
don't
don't cry.
Yeah, okay, I won't.
I think that viewers who watch the show sort of wanting just answers are sort of inevitably bound to be frustrated, and I think that we we hope that the character stories will be compelling and that we will be providing some answers to questions while raising others. But the sort of ongoing nature of mysteries and the fact that we are, that the show is going to be on for a long time means that, some questions can't be answered. If we answered those questions, there would be no core to the show left. So
I think a wise man, once compared the show to the Roadrunner cartoon, and I think that thinking more about that analogy, that the fact that the Roadrunner never actually gets caught by Wile E. Coyote, but if Wile E. Coyote were to catch the Roadrunner, I think that would be enormously unsatisfying. And what's so clever about those cartoons is how Wile E. Coyote tried to catch the Roadrunner, and that there were a variety of different methodologies, and how many different ways are there to fall very, very far off the same cliff and still amuse somebody? And that is the challenge before us as storytellers. But we really believe in our hearts that if Wile E. Coyote were to catch the Roadrunner, everyone would go, well, I kind of felt like I wanted that to happen, but I really didn't.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think it would be temporally satisfying, but not fully satisfying. That being said, though, we are answering questions this year. You will know a lot more about the others. You will know
where Walt
is and what happened to him, and among other things, including hopefully we're going to get to another chapter of Jack's marriage and sort of finish that run of episodes so that you'll actually know, kind of, as Damon was talking about before, a little bit more definitively what exactly was the kind of the course of his marriage. So let's talk a little bit about Fire and Water, and then let's get to these fan questions, Damon.
Did I have told you that's my favorite part? The fan questions.
You have, actually.
So Fire and Water. By the way, we should mention that the Hunting Party, beautifully directed by Stephen Williams, and even
yes,
more
indeed.
beautifully written by Liz Sarnoff and Christina Kim.
Yes.
That was her first script, which very, very exciting.
Yes.
And Fire and Water was written by Eddie Kitsis and Adam Horowitz, and is directed by Jack Bender, who directs many episodes for us. And it's a Charlie episode. And I think one of the things, certainly as the writers of the show, that we have been hearing a lot prior to these episodes airing, is sort of, what's going on with Charlie and Claire? What's going on with that Virgin Mary statue? And we had always sort of said that was going to be the middle run of episodes, starting with the Echo episode.
Right, that we would start revisiting some of our central characters from last season who have been sort of neglected in our telling the stories of the tailies. And so this next run of episodes really features our, kind of many of our principal characters from last season. We have Charlie, we have Sawyer, we have Claire. All of them are going to get flashback stories coming up. So for those of you who have been waiting for your favorite characters to get another flashback story,
they're coming.
They're coming.
And this episode is not a big sort of island mystery mythology episode. It's sort of about settling into the core relationships of the show. Well, there's actually a story in Fire and Water featuring Hurley, and has a little bit of romance to it, not to spoil too much, but just to entice. And then obviously the sort of key relationship here is between Charlie and Claire, after he sort of lied to her about what was in the statue, sort of what the immediate after effects of that lie are, and also sort of the interesting obstacle that begins to develop is that Claire is sort of beginning to develop a little bit of a relationship with Locke. Which we started in season 1, and then whether she looks at him as sort of a protector and a father figure, or something more, as something that's very interesting to us, and very threatening to Charlie, and that sort of is the real sort of dramatic conflict that this episode focuses on.
Right. Just to go back to your comment about Hurley a second ago, Damon, I would say that the number one question that we get asked these days is, why has the fat guy not lost any weight? And we just want to let you know that question is going to be addressed in the narrative of the show coming up very soon.
Yes, exactly. Not this show, but
right.
Very, very soon.
Exactly.
So that's what we've got going on in this episode. Just as a sort of little tidbit for the Easter egg hunters, there is a flashback in this episode that takes place in London, and you will see the London skyline, and you might want to check it out sort of very, very carefully. There's an iconic building there that you music fans might recognize. I don't want to tip from what, but there's some signage.
Homage, as
there's
it
some
were.
signage on that building too that might pay off later for those of you who are Easter egg hunting that
Right.
that you should write down and say, what does this mean? And
Right.
but all will be revealed.
Exactly. All right, so let's. I think that's pretty. That's pretty much all we want to say about Fire and Water until you guys have seen it, and we'll talk about it next time after you guys have seen it. So let's move on to some questions here, Damon.
This is my favorite part.
Okay, you want to go first then?
Yes. This is actually a great question, Carlton, and I think you'll be able to answer it well. This is posted by Booyah319. If Lost had not been successful during its first season, how would you have ended the season, and what else would have been different? Imagine you found out midway through, say, when Locke found the hatch.
Wow, that is a good question. And
Booyah319.
why 319?
I guess there were 318 other booyahs is the answer.
The problem with all television series is that, almost all television series, you never know when they're going to end. So this is always problematic. If you're making a show and the ratings are marginal, you're sort of scraping along. You're hoping you're going to get renewed. And so it's very rare that you have an opportunity to sort of do the definitive ending. And I think this show would have been that, it's a very good question how it would have been resolved, because obviously there's sort of big story arcs that are set in play. But had the handwriting been on the wall that the show was not doing well ratings-wise, we probably would have accelerated the mysteries, and we would have tried to answer some mythological questions, and it's just a question of sort of figuring out, well, what can you reasonably do in a short period of time in terms of answering those sorts of questions.
I think we would have been so bitter about it, though, that we just say whatever and done whatever we wanted to do. And it's hard to say. I mean, there's the show Reunion that was on the WB this year that was sort of constructed around
It was on Fox, I think.
Was it on Fox?
Yeah.
Maybe it was on Fox. In any case, it was constructed around this huge mythology and very flashback based. And basically, the conceit of the show was every year was going to be. Every episode was another year in these guys' lives, and there was an overarching murder mystery, and then the show just got canceled. So they never got the opportunity to, if they had known the show wasn't doing well, what do? They have one guy stand up in the middle of the scene and say, "I did it," but there'd be no context for it. So
I think we would, hopefully have had an opportunity for Damon and I to don some smoking jackets and just step out in front of the hatch and with a whiteboard and actually just sort of diagram out all the mythology of the show. That would have been sort of my fantasy for how we ended the show.
Or we have the Jupe ending, which we've sort of referred to in the past, which is sort of in the writer's room. We have this literally a glass box, and it says, "In case of cancellation, break glass." And in there, we have written some pages that we don't want to spoil for you because we might still have to use it even once we're up against American Idol. But basically, it involves a talking monkey named Jupe who smokes a pipe and turns around and explains exactly every mystery on the island in sort of a 4-page scene. Just in case anything were to happen to us too, that'd be also good because we don't really entrust people with that much information.
That's fantastic. All right, well let me kind of throw one out to you here, Damon.
I wish you would, Carlton, because this is my favorite part.
Really?
Yeah.
It's your favorite part?
It really is.
I didn't know that. This is a question submitted by Hugs for Sawyer. How come there weren't any teens on the plane? The closest is Walt, and he's only 10. Also, how come the plane left in 2004, but the peaches in What Kate Did during the scene where she gets her money say 2005 on them? They have only been on this island for less than 2 months.
I guess I'll answer the first part first, which is how come there weren't any teens on the plane. What many people don't know is that there is a teen shortage in Australia right now, and for some reason, not unlike the baby boom in the United States, there is a large generational gap. So that on the continent of and the country in Australia, there are literally people up to the age of 12, and then it starts again at 20. For 8 years, nobody reproduced in Australia.
That's
and
incredible.
Since the plane, it is an anomaly that a lot of people don't. I think 60 Minutes is doing a story on it. But
wow.
In any case, that is why, since our plane departed from Sydney, There were no teens on the plane. The Peach question is a much trickier one and involves time travel. Therefore, I'd rather not answer it.
Okay.
I will say we leave many, in all seriousness, we leave many intentional Easter eggs on the show. But at the same time, there are also occasional what we
Gaffes.
call continuity gaffes.
Right.
And if there was in fact a Peach that says 2005 on it, that was a mistake. That
We're not perfect.
We are not responsible for. Those Peaches should have been from the year
2004.
2000. It should
Yeah.
not even 2004, because What Kate
Right.
Did actually takes place during sort of
Yes.
2000 or 2001.
That's true.
So I will say there was a
Good catch.
misprint on the Peach.
Yes.
That would be my excuse there.
Okay.
I have one more question for you, Carlton, because this is my favorite
Just
part.
one more?
Well, two each is like because we just talk and talk and talk and talk.
You're right. It's true.
I will ask you. Let's see. That's a pretty good one. Some of these are just. Okay, this is a good one. Two producers from GQ Quintano. Why is this so-called monster stares at Locke and Echo? Well, that's not good grammar. I'm just going to intuit here, GQ. Why is it that this so-called monster stares at Locke and Echo, but yet rips the pilot out of the cockpit and gets eaten and left for dead?
Wow, that is a very good question.
That is a good question.
And I think that in sort of the examining the fact that those two events happen, I think that the answer sort of lies there. That obviously the pilot and the way in which he behaved, and the way in which Echo and Locke behaved towards the monster, I think determine their fates. And I'm sure if you surf around on the web, you will obviously discover that there were all sorts of hidden frames in the smoke monster that related to Echo's life, and that these film frames, sort of were all significant images from his past, and the monster was sort of cycling through those images, and after cycling through those images and sort of evaluating Echo, made a decision about how to behave towards Echo. And I think that, without saying more, I think that I think that your question hits the nail right on the head in terms of, the monster is discriminating. The monster does not treat everyone equally.
Well, what's very interesting, Carlton, is that that when Locke sort of sees the monster for the second time in the finale of last year, it treats him much differently. In fact, it attacks him and tries to drag him into a hole. So, how would your theory correspond with that action?
Well, I think that at that particular moment in time, Locke's behavior and attitude may not have been the same as when he was confronted by the monster the first time.
Maybe a little less secure in his sort of faith that he was on the right path.
That would be a very good assumption, Damon.
I'm good at this.
You are.
I love this part.
I think you might have a little inside information too.
There's that.
Okay, so can I ask you another question?
One
here?
more question, Carlton.
All right, this is from.
You can have too much of a good thing.
All right, this is from Manny Pappy, 2434, who has had 103 posts in the last 90 days. So,
Oh, no.
Thank you for being a avid fan, Manny Pappy.
I think it's pronounced Poppy.
Poppy, Manny, Poppy. Okay, all right, Manny. Here's his question. Does the electromagnetic wall in the hatch and the electromagnetic station from the Dharma Initiative have anything to do with the fact that John Locke can walk after being in a wheelchair for 4 years? And in the season 1 finale, when Hurley is driving his car to the airport in slow motion, the number sequences can be seen on the speedometer and in the airport on the field hockey jerseys. Are these little jokes that the writers put in, or are they for us, the viewers, to discover?
I'm going to start with the second part first this time, Carlton. Yes, in the finale, all the numbers that are dropped into sort of Hurley's run to the airport were all not jokes, but they were what we call Easter eggs. They were planted very specifically in Hurley's bit because of his own affiliation with the numbers. But there are actually, other than those mentions, the speedometer and the field hockey jerseys, you will find them in other places. I believe the gentleman who is driving around the little cart that Hurley commandeers is wearing a hat, and there's some gate numbers in there, and
Right.
on the ticket agent's screen, as she's sort of typing away in an effort to get Hurley to his proper gate, we intentionally planted the numbers all over that one. The first part about the electromagnetic wall and the hatch and the electromagnetic station and how that might correlate to Locke's ability to walk. I don't know. I think that this is not the first time that I've heard that theory, and I think it's very interesting. But I would I would be curious as to how an electromagnet under the ground could enable somebody to walk. That is to say, unless his legs were somehow electromagnetically powered, and he was bionic in some form. But I think it's safe to say that there are many mysteries about the true nature of whatever is beyond that concrete, and whether or not it is a very strong electromagnet or whether or not it's just strong enough to draw keys and change to it, is something that we will certainly be peeling back the layers of as we approach the finale. I think all will sort of be revealed about the nature of that wall and what is beyond it, and whether or not it actually has any real function.
Right.
Because I think that's in play. It could just be some sort of ginormous hoax, I would imagine.
I mean, I think that we can promise you that we're going to deal with what happens if you don't push that button narratively this season. You will see more story material about the button and about the electromagnetic force field.
I think the button should have flashbacks. I think we should see it being crafted in a plastics company, and the guy who etches the word execute onto it, and then it gets placed onto the keyboard, and the keyboard. I think that'd be fascinating.
Genius. I think that's a sweeps episode.
I think it is a sweeps episode.
That's fantastic.
We'll just call it execute.
Yeah, that's good. That's
good. Awesome.
Exactly.
You guys have just been witness to
the birth of a story
an
idea.
episode on Lost. We'll do it in like the 9th season or the 10th season.
I think that's great.
And on that note, I think
we should say sayonara.
Sayonara.
Or adios.
Adios.
Or goodbye. Or andiamo.
What does that mean?
It means it's time for us to get the heck out of Dodge.
How about ciao?
Ciao.
That concludes this week's podcast. Be sure to check out additional exclusive content at lost.abc.com, where you can also submit your own fan questions. Fire and Water airs Wednesday, January 18th from 9 to 10 p.m.